Well, next Monday is Chinese New Year Day.
下个星期马上就是农历年了。
And as a Chinese, every year, Chinese New Year is always a special time.
身为华人，大年初一都是最特别的日子。
The Chinese race is the largest ethnic group with 1/5 of the world's population.
华人是世界上最多人口的种族，占了1/5。
There are more people that speak Chinese than any other language in the world.
在世界上说华语的人口超过其他所有的语言。
It is also the most commonly used language already on the internet today. Together with the Jews, Chinese is one of the earliest and the oldest enduring civilizations. It has a 4,500 years of unbroken history. But I wonder how many of you have experienced this when we become Christians. You see, to most of us Chinese, when we become Christians, somehow we are made to feel like we have forsaken our Chinese roots, that we have abandoned our Chinese heritage and culture, that we have embraced a foreign Western religion, a religion of the white people. And so we kind of feel a little embarrassed, especially during Chinese New Year season. You meet your family and relatives and say, oh, we hear that now you're a Christian. You no longer love your family, no longer love your parents anymore, huh? Because if you're Chinese, you should either be a Taoist, a Confucianist, or a Buddhist. Now, I want to say this, that those are great religions. There are many, many millions of believers and followers of Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism. But today I want to give you a little bit of education. The Chinese history has a 4,500-year unbroken record. Let's take this to be 0 BC. So now we are here, we're at 2009, year of the ox. But you know what? The Chinese history stretches until 2500 BC. Now, Taoism came about 6 BC. About the 5th BC, you have Confucianism, and you have, I spelled wrongly, Buddhism. So the big question is, what about those 2,000 years? Before Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, what did the Chinese people believe in? What is interesting is this. We have very clear historical records. For the first 2,000 years of their history, the Chinese people worship a singular supreme God and not many dozens or millions of deities. They worship a God by the name of Shangdi. Today I'm going to write in my broken Chinese. All right? Now, and this, when you read the historical records, Shangdi has exactly the same character, nature, and power as the God of the Old Testament. But while the Hebrew people called him Yahweh or Jehovah, the Chinese people from the beginning call him Shangdi, the king that lives above the Most High God. Some of them call him as Tian or as Sang Tian. Now you notice how you write the word Tian? Everything that is big, that is star, he's bigger than them. He's the Most High. So the Old Testament calls him the Most High God. China's greatest historian was a man by the name of Sima Qian. In his classic historical records, he recorded of a king called Huang Di, or the Yellow Emperor. Now, Huang Di is supposed to be the originator of all Han people, Han Chinese. He lived around 2400 BC to 2500 BC. That means right from the beginning.
他所居住的时代大概是公元前2400到2500年，在最开头的时候。
And Sima Qian recorded that Huang Di actually built an altar in Taishan, which is the mountain in Shandong province, to worship Shangdi God, the one supreme God. Well, the Chinese, I'm going to ask Lu to read what was written.
上帝者，天之别名也，神无二主。
In other words, Shangdi is another name for Tian. And he says this, the spirits do not have two lords. In other words, the Lord your God is one. Again, it confirms exactly what the Old Testament says. Now, there is also a song found in the collected statutes of the Ming Dynasty. I am not even going to attempt to try to read the Wenyan Wen. Now, let me translate it for you.
这个要为大家解释一下了。
Of the old in the beginning, there was a great chaos without form and dark. The 5 planets have not begun to revolve, nor the 2 lights to shine. In the midst of it, there existed neither form nor sound. You, O spiritual sovereign, came forth in your sovereignty and first did separate the impure from the pure. Now notice the order. You make heaven, you make earth, you make man. All things became alive with reproducing power. Turn your Bible with me to Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. Doesn't this commentary sound exactly like the book of Genesis? It says in verse 1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And then it says God separated light from darkness and the land from the waters. And He created trees and plants, fish and birds and beasts of the field. And then He created man. Genesis 1 says all were given reproducing power to produce after their own kind. Can you see, long before all this worship came in, long before Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism, before there were temples that were full of idols for you to worship. 2,000 over years, the Chinese people worship a singular, supreme, sovereign God who is the creator of heaven and earth, and His name is Shangdi. Same nature, character, and power of Jehovah Yahweh God of the Old Testament. Now, nobody knows when Chinese writing was originated. But most will agree Chinese writing came about probably in 2500 BC. So centuries before the Egyptians built the pyramids, you have the Chinese writing. And with Chinese writing, with the ability to write, that means you can document history. Now, this is very interesting because from the time they were able to document history, there were several global events that everybody could remember. During the same time as 2500 BC, you have the flood. You have the Tower of Babel. Now, what other events were there that people possibly, if they were alive, and if those events were true, they could remember? Now, I mean, wouldn't you agree, if there's a flood that covers the whole earth, then you will remember. If there is a Tower of Babel that caused people to be scattered everywhere and languages to come forth, surely you remember. Now, if those events were true, and that the Bible is not a fable, then the people that are alive around 2500 BC, they must remember the creation story. Because Adam was alive 1,600 years before. You see, when the flood came, you know, Methuselah just died. And when Methuselah was alive, Adam was also alive. Those days, the people lived a long time. Adam lived 900 years. Methuselah, 969 years. In fact, it was only 8 generations from creation to the flood. So if these things were true, then people alive must surely remember them.
对呀。
And surely they want to document down in their historical records. Now, Chinese writings are unique because somehow they have this ability to capture Chinese history. Because they don't use letters, they use characters in picture form. Every Chinese word not only expresses a meaning, it captures a history. Every character tells a story. So, if all these things had happened, and that the Chinese people were the descendants of the Tower of Babel, they were the descendants of Noah, surely they want to record all these global cataclysmic events. And for the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to show you that all these global events were documented in Chinese history.
And I feel like New York City. Get me to the farm.